Today is Monday, September 26th, 2022. This is the fourth and concluding program for Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Month. I am Dr. Eric Ruby, founder of Massachusetts Walks Again. On the first Monday of this month, with the support of the Greater Boston chapter of United Spinal, I had presented information about both organizations and our network. A proclamation signed by Governor Baker, supporting information by our sponsor, Senator Mark Pacheco of Taunton, and data from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. In the second week, our grant recipients discussed their research. In the third week, we presented information on safe travel with an SCI during the pandemic. The title of today's program is Advocacy and Political Issues. As a community, we need to support each other, be proactive, and level the playing field in a culture of inclusion, equity, and diversity, and accessibility. Communication with each other, which might result in letter writing and calls with personal stories, is how we move mountains. Politicians make the laws. Only with awareness of our issues will progress happen. Major organizations supporting disability programs are on our side. We need to utilize their power. With passion, purpose, and persistence, each day can be filled with a better quality of life and activities of daily living. We do have the power, collectively and individually. Be motivated, be energized, be part of the solution for yourself and others who deal with disability. You can make a difference.
Hello, my name is Doug Fry, and I'm with the Greater Boston Chapter of United Spinal Association. Thank you, Dr. Ruby, for leading this Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Month program, and thank you for all the participants so far, including the policymakers, researchers, travelers, and advocates. Our organization is a nonprofit group, and our mission is to reach, inspire, support, and empower those individuals and their families and significant others who have suffered a spinal cord injury. And we do this primarily through one-on-one peer mentoring and over 30 peer support groups each month. Some of the types of support groups that we have: women with SCID group, a nutrition group, significant others, a Spanish speaking group, newly injured after dark for women who are significant others to a person with SCI, after dark for men with SCI, a general support groups on Thursday afternoons, family and friends, a kids group, and an after dark for women with SCID. Our organization has 4 excellent staff members, and we have over 25 volunteers, all who have either had a spinal cord injury or a family member or significant other of someone who has. If you know of anyone struggling with a spinal cord injury, please let us know and we can try to help. We also have a program to help people with spinal cord injuries that are in nursing homes return to the community if they are so motivated. And we have a grant program available to fund durable medical equipment and vehicle modifications for people that need it. We encourage people through our support groups and one-on-one mentoring to advocate for themselves to get what they need for equipment, ramps, shower chairs, mattresses, vehicle modifications when they're ready to drive, etc. It's very important also for our community to advocate and tell our personal stories to the policymakers at the local, state, and national level. And it's our responsibility in the SCI community to make our desires, wishes, and needs known. What I'd like to do now is to share some information on the local, state, and national level to help you get out and spread the word. On the local level, think about getting involved in your town or city's Commission on Disability. I was involved in the town. I just moved recently. The town I'm in doesn't have one, but the prior town had one. I was on it for 3 years, and it was a great experience. And you can really help mold local policies and changes. And get out and ask business owners if you frequent their shops to add a automatic doors if you're having trouble getting in the existing one. Ask your local police to enforce handicap parking violators. Speak up when you see barriers at public shops and restaurants. And if the proprietors don't fix it, reach out to your local independent living center. Each one of the 13 in the state have an enforcement person to make those changes. And remember, it's our civil right to have access. On the state level, there are several initiatives going on over the next year or so that you can get involved with. One of the most important ones is an act expanding warranty protections for consumers with disabilities. This will improve the wheelchair repair timeframe, which we all know is way too long. There's also the Accessible Mass Act for housing, which will increase supply of affordable, accessible housing. There's the Accessible Mass Act for workspaces to enforce accessibility in non-public spaces, portions of work spaces. On the PCA front, we all know how difficult it is to get PCAs. There's been some good progress made, but more is needed. There's also several transportation issues that are being worked on, including working with the MBTA and the ride. And one thing I would do for the state level is subscribe to the weekly Disability Policy Consortium newsletter, and their website is DPCMA, and they have great updates on the important issues going on in the state. Let me share my screen so I can take a look at it. This is what it looks like. Talks about advocacy. You can learn as much as you'd like about it and get involved. And on the national level, our parent organization, the United Spinal, has a very robust advocacy effort, and they have take action alerts for key initiatives. The current ones they're working on are the wheelchair standing systems coverage, take back our air travel rights, catheter coding and coverage under Medicare, and increasing funding for the model systems research. Check out the United Spinal website when you have a chance, and you can become a grassroots advocate in their organization. UnitedSpinal.org is the website, and this is their homepage. And if you click under advocacy, you'll see that there's several categories that you can learn from. One of my favorites is the take action area, which will show you not only the resources, and they'd like to have everyone be a grassroots advocate. You can find out about that here. And then under the action alerts, these are different initiatives that we're interested in having folks reach out to their congressman to take action. I'll show you how easy it is. I did this one this morning, the Air Carrier Act access. You just simply click on the take action. Maybe that's not working as I did it today. Let's see if we get the Skims one. So this is what happens when you click on the button. The letter is already written. It identifies my senators and representatives, and you can add your personal story into the message, into the body of the message if you would like. And then it has my name and information about it. And all I need to do is to click send, and that message will be sent to my senators and my representatives. So it's very easy to do. I encourage you to check that out and support those initiatives that you're in favor of. We encourage you to get involved, take action. You know, it's important for our community to advocate and to tell our personal stories. It's a responsibility to make our desires, wishes, and needs known to the policymakers. So thank you very much for having us on, and good luck. Thank you.
The Disability Law Center is the protection and advocacy agency for Massachusetts. DLC is a private, nonprofit organization responsible for providing protection and advocacy for the rights of Massachusetts residents with disabilities. They are looking for individuals with disabilities to fill out their priorities survey to help them determine if they are addressing the needs of the disability community or if there are emerging trends they should be focusing on. Click the link in the description of this video to take the survey for yourself and tell the DLC what is important to you and to your community. Thank you to the DLC for everything that you do.
Hello, my name is Deborah Freed, and I am a member of the New England Chapter of Paralyzed Veterans of America. And we have been a longtime supporter of Mass Walks Again and Dr. Ruby's program, his Advocacy Day at the State House. Unfortunately, they're not allowed to do that yet this year, hopefully next year. Our mission at PVA is for spinal cord injury, MS, and ALS veterans. And our advocacy group also supports veterans who do not have a spinal cord injury, as well as the disabled community. One of the things that I like best about a veteran service organization is that we are not solely a veteran service organization. PVA in 2004 basically saved my life in that I wasn't working at the time and I needed something to keep me from falling into serious depression, and that was the National Veterans Wheelchair Games, which was in St. Louis, Missouri in 2004. I have been to 15 games since then over the years. One of the things that the New England chapter recently did because of COVID was the chapter was able to provide a little over $10,000 to various chapter members in need during the 2 years of basic lockdown of COVID. And if anyone needs any more support, please let the chapter know and we will keep you posted on that regard. As far as advocacy goes, the chapter, I'm very proud to say, is a nationally recognized, has a nationally recognized government relations program. We support legislation that helps veterans and all peoples with spinal cord injury and disease enjoy a better quality of life, and maximize their independence and fulfill their potential, which I am literally living proof of that as well. In Mass, recently, the Accessible Mass Act, the Accessible Workplaces Act, and the Adaptive Housing Mass Act was also, our government relations department has worked very hard to move those items forward in our state legislations. Our organization strongly supports these three pieces of legislation as they have direct impact on the quality of our members' lives and their ability to contribute as dignified and productive members of their communities. PVA has also testified to support veteran-specific legislation, including an act regarding parking in certain airports, an act relative to 100% disabled veterans recreation, and an act relative to emergency medical transportation provided to veterans. And in conclusion, if I may, in summary, our mission is pretty straightforward. We seek to empower our members to achieve the things that they fought for: freedom and independence. We are grateful for this community and the work and dedication of Mass Watts Again. Together we can improve the lives of those living with SCID. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lita Anderson. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Government Relations for the Massachusetts Medical Society. I'm so honored to be joining you all virtually to support the 19th Annual Spinal Cord Injury Awareness event, sponsored by Massachusetts Walks Again and the Greater Boston chapter of the United Spinal Association. The Massachusetts Medical Society is a professional association representing more than 25,000 physicians, residents, and medical students across all clinical disciplines, organizations, and practice settings. To paraphrase our mission, we aim to advance medical knowledge and to develop and maintain the highest professional and ethical standards of medical practice so as to promote the highest quality of care for our patients. The MMS is committed to advocating on behalf of patients for a better healthcare system and on behalf of physicians to help them provide the best care possible. Our goal is always to advocate for the shared interests of our physician members and their patients to support not only the practice of medicine, but with the higher aim to improve patient care, health outcomes, and health equity. The Medical Society believes that healthcare is a human right and maintains a long-standing policy to strive for universal access to healthcare and non-discrimination in healthcare settings for all patients. We're committed to working for the best possible healthcare for every patient in the Commonwealth, regardless of racial identification, national or ethnic origin, sexual orientation or gender identity, religious affiliation, disability, immigration status, or economic status. The Medical Society and our physician members support the disability community, whether it be in their medical offices or in the halls of the State House. In our advocacy, we aim to apply an equity lens in all that we do to ensure that we are prioritizing marginalized communities, including the disability community. The Medical Society continues to work with our physicians to better recognize and understand and address bias and barriers to care for folks in the disability community within the healthcare system. Thank you to Dr. Ruby and Massachusetts Walks Again for reaching out, and we really look forward to working with you and others in this upcoming legislative session to support the great work of many of your dedicated organizations and to learn more about specific issues that we can support that will improve access to care for all in the disability community. Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Amy Jozan. I'm a PhD holder of forensic psychology, and I also work alongside Angela Ortiz in advocating for the Massachusetts Pediatric Home Nursing Care Campaign and Pediatric Palliative Care Company, PD PALS, who is also advocating on behalf of Bill S-768, an act to protect medically fragile children. So some of the overarching components of the bill is asking the Executive Office of Human and Health Services to make necessary budget increases aligning with improved utilization of continuous skilled nursing. Right now, a lot of the allotted hours are not being filled, and this has detrimental impacts for families and children. So some of the things that we're seeing are that nurses are not getting paid for training. So a lot of the nurses are very underqualified and not supported through supervision when they come into the homes, which creates a huge safety risk. Another thing that we're seeing are that reimbursement rates are not being looked at on a regular basis. So a lot of nurses coming out of school are actually being paid just as much as a cashier at Target. So the competitive nature of nursing, typically a lot of nurses will go to facilities or hospitals where they are getting benefits and where they are getting paid more adequately. So this only further feeds into the shortage of nursing, especially in the home arena. And there's no marketing as far as home health care goes because nurses don't know it as a viable source when they go through college. Clinicals are typically done in hospitals, facilities, or offices. So yeah. So a second component of the bill is that there will be authorization criteria not being altered in order to restrict care and result in reduction of continuing skilled nursing hours. Many of these hours are insufficiently allotted because they're based on actual hands-on care time. They don't look at observable measures. So for instance, my son started having about 80 seizures a day. We got 3 minutes of skilled nursing care a day for administering emergency medication, but nothing for actually doing neurological checks or making sure he's okay. So if my son is having seizures all night, then that means I will stay up all night and a nurse can come in and give medication for 3 minutes. But this does not ensure that my child can stay safe and in the home adequately. Nurses that work behind desks, called community case management nurses, typically are making the decisions for allotting services, which has led to reduction in hours, even though these kids still have a high acuity need. And a lot of these services are provided in response to children declining after getting their services ripped away. So we're asking that physicians are able to start looking at some of the ways in which these hours are allotted instead of nurses who never actually enter into the home or see the patients themselves. Another overarching component of the bill is that the Office of Medicaid can review nursing wages and payment rates. So this is one of the largest underlying reasons why you're seeing nurses move away from the field, and why you're seeing so many challenges with safety and lack of training. The reimbursement rates have been they haven't been looked at. They were stagnant for almost 25 years. And then with that being said, the way in which agencies spend the money is not being looked at all, or it's not being regulated, meaning 90% of these increases can go straight to management and it doesn't make it to the nurse's pocket. Therefore, it doesn't really benefit the families and it doesn't safeguard the workforce needed to make sure these families can stay home safely. Lastly, another important thing that S768 is going to be addressing, it has language regarding the importance on reporting in areas such as filing for appeals, how much is being spent towards the nurses' actual pockets and stuff of that nature to ensure if there's an issue, it can be addressed and it's backed by data. The state absolutely needs data in order to make the decisions on this population, the money spent, and if it refuses to measure things, then nothing is going to get fixed and our kids remain at a significant risk of declining and or being removed from the home and in an institution. So that goes to the next point. So when healthcare is treated as a business and populations remain overlooked, kids remain at a substantial risk of institutionalization, which costs tremendously, not only for the state, but for families and the world's most medically involved children. A lot of these children require ICU level care around the clock. And when there is actually no liability and no way of enforcing things, these kids go overlooked. So here's a little bit about the implications and impacts of not having safeguards that are codified in law. Even though it's federally mandated that the state is supplying services to these families and making sure that they actually have services within the home to ensure that they're safe and can remain in the home, there's 1,000 families at immediate risk because they're being completely ignored and these things are not being enforced. So we need something that's enforceable by law to make sure we can build as a foundation and to even make sure that the state recognizes that these kids exist and that it's actually a large community. So yeah, insufficiently allotted hours go unfilled. 40% of continuing skilled nursing hours are actually unfilled, according to the latest biannual CHIA report. And this can be looked up on mass.gov. Services are being reduced yearly despite high acuity and need. These children's needs are absolutely, most of them stagnant. So my son has cerebral palsy. That is a lifelong persistent illness. And typically these things get worse before they get better. So despite the fact that the amount of families that use these services have remained relatively stable over the last 4 years. The amount of money spent on CSN services has continued to decline in the millions. Furthermore, there's underqualified staff and high turnover. A lot of this has to do with the stagnant rates and the fact that they are labeled independent contractors if not working under their agency, so they are not able to receive PTO, sick time, or any of the like 401k. And these are highly skilled professionals who are taking care of the world's most medically fragile children without the prospect of being able to retire. Burnout is a really, really high likelihood for these staff, and they need to be protected so that they can help serve our children and families, and do it in a way where they're actually shown appreciation for what they do. So yeah, lack of benefits and incentive, lack of effective case management. Families are actually in charge of finding their own care. We are sent a list of 400 people, which is always outdated, and we are responsible for assuming that, but case management should be supporting with that, and billing, none of that seems to be the outcome. So yes, we need to make sure financial decisions are being made in support of this population to keep them home at the cost of, so my kid was in the hospital for about a week, and that was about $108,000 bill. So if you think about how much just that lump sum there could actually be spent on effective home care to keep a child home over a year versus a week, that's, a lot to kind of take into consideration. It's not just the impacts on these families, but for a practical and economic standpoint, it's important that we support the world's most fragile. And if we can support the world's most fragile, then we can support other populations. So yeah, and in order to do that, there needs to be oversight and accountability. So here's just some stories. There's this child named Aiden. As you can see, he's a baby. He's only given 25 hours. As you can see, he's on a continuous oxygen. So that's a highly, that requires a high skill to keep him home. And he's getting less than 20% of his hours filled. Over here, we have Leyland's story. They are authorized 126 hours. As you can see, they have 2 other beautiful children, and they're only getting 80 hours covered. So when are they able to sleep? I'm not really sure, but this is a lot of what you're going to see when it comes to having unfilled hours, how this impacts families and the labor force, how it's impacting their formal and informal support systems. We're all pretty burned out. And if we could just have the support we need in the home environment, things would be very different. If we have no overnight nursing, one of us has to constantly keep an eye on her due to seizures, desaturation, and suctioning. Lack of nursing has affected my family, marriage, and mental health. As a family of 5, we are basically on one income due to lack of nursing. Where's our care? And here's Jordan. So Jordan is, bedridden, requires a substantial level of care, only receiving 48 hours, and the actual coverage is 0. So this is what Jordan's mom says. I am filling personal care attendant and home health 8 hours because I cannot return to work full or even part-time without reliable, skilled help. So kids deserve dignity and should remain home with their family, receiving quality care. And then lastly, we have another child. It says, protect my son. They wish to remain anonymous or keep his name anonymous. They are receiving 46 hours and they are actually filling 0. And it makes it impossible for us to ever get a break. And it's scary knowing only my husband and I are fully trained on his care. It also makes it difficult to spend time with our other 2 children. This is a very common problem, and think of 1,000 families and their family members who are having to be on the front lines and assist, and this impacts their work, their ability to remain in the labor force, and it's detrimental. So advocacy, that's where we can partner, and that's where you all can come in. So a river cuts through a rock, not because of its power, but its persistence. Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. I'm asking that through this partnership, you tell our story so that the state knows that we exist, and so that they can't refuse to hear our stories, so that they can be partners with us as well and collaborate with those who have lived experience and who have the knowledge to know where the need is, so that we can fix it in a way that's collaborative and together. And we can move mountains that way. We just have to keep chipping away at it. But the first step to doing that is supporting Bill S768. So if you would spread the word and be a part of this, I would greatly appreciate it. And so would all these families. Lastly, I just want to give a shout out and thanks to Senator Friedman and leadership who have been supporting these bills. And we have to get more people on board. So thank you all so much for listening. And I hope that I can see you guys in a some sort of capacity where we can fight together, maybe at the State House. All right.
In conclusion, hope is an attitude. Research is our strategy. Funding makes it happen. My thanks to the Greater Boston chapter of United Spinal and Ryan DeRoche in particular, who have made virtual our reality. I am grateful to our speakers and attendees who have shared their time, knowledge, experience, and interest. With continued progress in fighting COVID, I hope to see all of us back at the Massachusetts State House in person next year. Thank you.
It is my great pleasure to join this conference. I want to thank Dr. Jha for his invitation. Today, I'm going to discuss with you about post-spinal cord injury therapeutic effects of human neurostem cells. As we all know, neurostem cell as a biological concept has existed for a long time. However, its potential to be translated to treat clinical neurological problems, including neurotrauma, was only recognized after the discovery of adulthood neurogenesis in mammalian central nervous system in the 80s of the 20th century. As illustrated here, mammalian brain still possesses two primary neurogenic zones. One is a long lateral ventricle, the periventricular zone, that produce neurostem cells that migrate along rostral migratory stream to go to olfactory bulb, where they become fresh interneurons. Another neurogenic zone is in the hippocampal dentate gyrus in the subgranular zone, where newborn neurons also take place. It has been appreciated that such ability remains very robust during infant phase of human development, but it may be drastically diminished in the adulthood. Nevertheless, this suggested if we could use such capacity to treat neurotrauma, such as a spinal cord injury, the overall scale of a clinical efficacy would have been very different. Here is a strategic map showing us the current understanding about a clinically defined functional deficit after traumatic spinal cord injury. It has been recognized that such a state actually is formed by three sequential and parallel processes. That is the primary injury and the secondary injuries, such as excitotoxicity, oxidative damage, inflammation, and the endogenous recovery mechanisms set in motion by primary injury. From a clinical point of view, therapeutic windows thus exist in impeding secondary injury and booming recovery mechanism, including trophic factor expression, neurostem cell reactivation, etc. what happened during primary injury is largely beyond the management of physicians. In my own lab, I decided to integrate newly emerged technologies from new fields such as stem cell biology, material science, synthetic materials, glial biology, and neuro-oncology to jointly integrate their strengths to investigate injured spinal cord. In other words, I decided to turn this table around to go back trying to define novel recovery neurobiology mechanisms that can be used as therapeutic targets. From there, eventually, we'll be able to update our understanding about adult spinal cord neurobiology. This was done by a novel multimodal technology that I and my collaborators introduced, invented for the field. Because back then in the late 90s and early 2000s, it has been well accepted that the acutely injured spinal cord epicenter, such as in this penetrating injury model and midline segmental hemisection, the microenvironment is too hostile about supporting any survival of donor cells. We decided to use synthetic, biologically compatible and degradable polymers to scaffold neurostem cells and immediately transplanted into this freshly created lesion zone. And this model offers a whole variety of neuropathophysiology and neurobiology targets to be investigated. As we all know, this model exactly mimics the clinical Brown-Séquard syndrome of clinical spinal cord trauma. What we found was that with such a treatment, the rats recovered robust hind limb locomotion because that was a lower thoracic injury on the affected side. As showing in this montage, that they restored consistent locomotion that can coordinate with front limb and bear body weight. That was in sharp contrast with lesion alone controls. We also got a bonus from that study. We found that polymer alone also had benefits, definitive benefits. In contrast, simply inject stem cell suspension into such an open lesion zone or even contusion injury epicenter would not help as much because donor cells did not survive very well. When we looked into mechanisms, we found that these red cells, they are donor marker M2, and they did not actually become new neurons or other neurotype cells such as oligodendrocytes, because the green neurofilament components did not have red color, suggesting there are host tissues. What we additionally uncovered was these donor cells survived long in the host spinal cord. These are 8, 10 weeks or even longer after spinal cord injury, remained as neurostem cells. As you see, they remained their own tracer beta-gal positive, which was green, and also there were positive of nesting that was red. So these yellow cells were long-surviving donor cells. These donor cells did not become ostracized, and they were largely GFAP, which is green negative. Very encouragingly, we reported the first evidence that transplantation of neural stem cells could suppress reactive gliosis, which we know is a detrimental factor for post-spinal cord injury beneficial neuroplasticity. And relative to control groups, reactive gliosis, as indicated by GFAP level, was drastically reduced. And that led us to hypothesize in this paper published in New England JA Medicine as an education piece that some of the original hypotheses about neural stem cells possibility to become naturally, spontaneously become new neurons and new oligodendrocytes to remyelinate axons to form new neuroparenchyma was indeed too naive. Instead, we found evidence that such a therapeutic effect was derived from neural stem cells' multiple functions that they can express trophic factors, they can impede inflammation and suppress scar formation, reduce cavity, and they can also help to reignite intrinsic neural circuits. And perhaps I also hypothesized their effect perhaps also involved their ability to nurture and reactivate distal spinal cord's intrinsic neural circuits. Clearly, these are the things need more experimental evidence. In a more recent paper, we found that such multiple function not only can be carried out by neural stem cells, it can also be carried out by human mesenchymal stromal stem cells. In this study, used the same strategy, same model. We observed robust neurological recovery. We also observed such a recovery did not occur because of a long distance corticospinal cord axon regeneration, because below injury, there was no such green axon signals. It was also not due to ruberospinal axon regeneration, because below injury in the recovered animals, they had no ruberospinal axon regeneration relative to segments above spinal cord lesion. What we observed was this very robust multifunction of stem cells that really enhanced the neurological integrity as indicated by synaptic markers in the intermediate gray neural network. It also helped to stabilize, maintain neuromuscular junction in the hind limb down through this multi-dimensional systemic neuromuscular tracing. Such approach enabled us to obtain this evidence. It also helped the existing proprior spinal projection network to reach the lumbar spinal cord alpha motor neurons. Lastly, such treatment further augmented sprouting of serotonergic fibers in distal spinal cord. Evidently, previously existed a classic concept about stem cells, including neural stem cells, could not be used to explain these novel actions we validated. So based on this evidence, I proposed a novel neurobiology concept about stem cells, that is a functional multipotency of stem cells. That was first gleaned from neuroprogenitor cells, such as neural stem cells, which illustrated this deep embedded innate biology of stem cells. In addition to their ability to become all three lineages of neural cells in developmental track, they can also possess this innate developmental neurobiology capacity that is in interaction through sensory microenvironment need that can activate developmental genes to produce neurotrophic factors, cytokines, including anti-inflammation cytokines, and shared exosomes that could even form gap junctions with adjacent cells. And this allowed them not only possess the potential to become new neural cells, but more importantly, they can modify, regulate injury environment to impede secondary injury, augment endogenous recovery mechanism. And this actually can be a huge hope for the future critical medical treatment of acute neurotrauma, because as summarized in this more recent paper from my lab, we have recognized actually spinal cord injury is a systemic complex of different disorders involving many pivotal systems. Conventional treatment such as receptor-specific agonist may improve specific functions such as respiration by 5-HT agonist, which was patented by my lab. Buspar is a good example. Buspar can also specifically activate lumbar motor generator neural circuits. It cannot cover the whole variety of treatment that are needed for instrument facilitate the neural rehab to eventually improve functional status of an individual living with SCI condition. For this broad spectrum therapeutic effect, local and systemic neural stem cell therapy in the near future may offer true therapeutic potential. In a brief summary, the platform technology of a polymer scaffolding of stem cells enabled the discovery of functional multipotency of stem cells, which resulted in more correct and more optimal applications of neural stem cells in basic and translational scientific research. Human neural stem cells-based multimodal effects enhanced the integrity of Rafi's spinal serotonergic reinnervation, proprior spinal network, neuromuscular junction integrity, and the lumbar central pattern generators. These multiple functions jointly could restore locomotion in mammalian species after thoracic and even higher level spinal cord injury, as long as the locomotor circuitry in the lumbar enlargement itself is spared. The data collectively elucidate recovery neurobiology. The recovery neurobiology is another novel concept which benefited from stem cell-based multimodal research that I put forward, but will not have time to go into details. Concisely, recovery neurobiology describes injured adult mammalian spinal cords may deploy polysynaptic neural circuits different from those of physiology for neural recovery. I want to acknowledge all the sponsors, especially my own lab team over years, my collaborators from different institutions. Their talented work and contribution made my presentation possible. Thank you all very much.